The following program is sponsored by ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor of biomedical informatics at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and I direct the ILRU program at Tier Memorial Hermann. We've got a great show for you today and a wonderful guest, and I'm looking forward to introducing her right after we take a break. But before we do, I want to ask you a question, and we'll answer it before the end of today's program. How many cancer survivors are there in the United States today? We'll get back to that later. Right now we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for Focus on Abilities. Glad you're here today. I'm Lex Frieden, and our guest on Focus on Abilities is Lindsey Vongthavaravat. Lindsey, welcome to today's show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Lindsey, you, as I recall, you're from Oklahoma.
Yes. I was born in Oklahoma, moved to Washington for a little bit, but then came back to Oklahoma.
And now you're in Houston.
Yes, I'm a junior at Rice studying cell biology and biosciences and minoring in global health. And
You're a junior and biosciences?
Biosciences, but concentrating in cell biology and genetics.
What's your plan?
I hope to eventually go to medical school, so I'm on the pre-med track, but I'm really interested in research as well. So I've been trying to get integrated in that as well, kind of what I've been doing with you, research.
Yeah. So a junior, that means you've got another year ahead of you, but you work during the summers, right?
Yes, I have actually been working at the ILRU for the past 2 summers. It's been an incredible experience, super, super crucial to what my college experience has been for sure.
So for those who may not know, ILRU is the Independent Living Research Utilization Program at Tier Memorial Hermann. And every summer we have an internship program. And Lindsey was selected 2 years ago to be an intern sponsored by the CPRIT program, right? CPRIT is the...
I believe it's the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas.
CPRIT is a Texas organization that puts a lot of money into cancer prevention and research. And for years it has brought a lot of important people, scholars, researchers, and others to our state to help cure cancer. And a lot of the work is done at MD Anderson Hospital in Houston. But the CPRIT program also sponsors an internship program. And we've been fortunate to have some really fantastic interns over the past 10 years. And Lindsey, you're a representative of those. It's a competitive program.
Yeah, pretty competitive. It's based through UT Health, and it's focused mainly on public health. But there's only last year, I think there's only about 8 students, 10 or so students in my year.
So the limited number of students each year. Actually, UT Health has 2 CPRIT internship programs. One at the School of Public Health, which you were part of, and the other one at our School of Biomedical Informatics. And the mentors, those of us who are faculty at UT Health, have a role in selecting students from the bios that they put forward and the plans. I mean, you had to write an essay, as I recall.
Yeah.
What you remember what you wrote about?
I think if I recall, I wrote about how I wanted to be a doctor and kind of the process and discovery of that path of just discovering. I think that was one of the main things I wrote about, because it was about public health, so just learning about something new. And I talked about kind of what inspired me to become a doctor and kind of my journeys thus far and what I really hope to see in the future.
So, and that's where I learned you were from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the experience at Rice generally been a good experience for you?
Yeah, I really, really love Rice. It's definitely, the difference between Houston and Oklahoma is quite grand. I love the city, and I love Rice as well. The community is incredible. The people there are super, super supportive, and I really enjoyed the coursework. I feel like I've been able to really delve into science and explore the TMC, get involved with IRU. So overall, it's been a really, really grateful. I'm really grateful.
The class size at Rice is managed too, right? You don't have any huge classes?
No, not really. I'd say the largest class I've had is probably about 150, 200 students, but I'd say the classes are pretty small. Most students have a really good opportunity to meet their professors and talk one-on-one, especially at office hours, but Rice is a pretty small school.
And most of the students live on campus?
I'd say so, half and half. You get kicked off one year. So this year was my year to get kicked off, but most students would prefer to stay on campus since we have residential colleges. So they can stay with their friends, and most people would prefer to stay on campus, but I'd say half and half.
So when you get in one of those colleges, you go back to the same one year after year?
Everyone, before you enter Rice, everyone is sorted. It's kind of like Harry Potter. There's, I believe, 11, maybe there's 12, but I'm specifically in Will Rice, but it's kind of a Harry Potter house. You go there, they have traditions, you compete with other colleges, so it's kind of a very fun, competitive community.
How many students in each college?
I'm not exactly sure. I think it's 100 per class, so probably around 400 per residential college.
Wow. So the experience at Rice has been good. The experience in Houston has been good.
Yes.
But as a student, you don't have much opportunity to get off campus, do you?
I think only to eat. I think especially the past few years, I've really tried to venture, to Bel Air or eat in downtown, especially eating. But there's been a lot of things to do in Houston, exploring downtown, traveling to Austin and Dallas. Definitely more to do than in Oklahoma for sure.
What about San Antonio?
I have not had the chance to go to San Antonio just yet.
Well, you put that on your bucket list.
Yep, definitely.
The restaurant scene, you get a chance to visit restaurants?
Yes, I love going to restaurants, especially in Bel Air, all the Asian food there. And then also near here, there's Rice Village as well. So me and my friends would try to go out. Well, maybe in freshman year, but not as much anymore, but definitely freshman year. We would try to venture out.
To explore.
To explore, yeah.
What are your favorite restaurants?
Oh, I can't pick. Just probably any Asian food in Bel Air. They're all good. I'm not picky.
Okay. Well, we've tried a lot of them too, so I agree with you. The CPRIT program gives you the opportunity to learn about a lot of things in the basic program. And then you select a program, or the program selects you. I guess it's a two-way street there. And you get to focus for part of the time while you're working during the summer. So you, as you described it, chose to work with us at ILRU. And at that time, as I recall, your focus was a little bit different than it is right now. What was your original proposal to do?
Yeah, so I think what originally drew me to IRU was because actually at Rice I'm very involved with the student with disabilities community there as well. Within the student government, I was a part of what we call a commission, so it's a committee there, and we focus on providing students with disability support, learning kind of what are the gaps on campus, disparities on campus, and trying to kind of bridge that gap. So that was kind of what drew me to your research already, because it was related to disability and I already had that kind of connection back at Rice. And I think if I remember, it's been so long since when I entered, but when I first entered IRU, I think I was really interested in cancer survivorship, but more on a sense of just in general cancer survivorship. I don't think there is any specific disability identity. It's such a broad field, but I can't really recall exactly the entering part of it.
Well, we'll give you a minute to reconsider and think, because we're going to take a break. And when we get back from our break, we'll talk more with Lindsey about cancer survivorship, what she's learned and what we know. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Focus on Abilities.
When your goal is to save time and money, book online with EcoPark and EcoPark 2. Now that's a smart game plan. Travel smarter, park smarter. EcoPark and EcoPark 2 at IAH.
In Houston, we make tomorrow together.
But first, we make dinner together. We mix ingredients and cultures. We create excitement you can taste.
And experiences to savor.
Join us in Houston.
Let's make tomorrow together.
Downtown is an art lover's dream with more than 65 pieces of public art.
The influx of so many people arriving here in Houston from around the world is very impactful on my palette as well as my canvas as an artist.
All the art that was in Houston really got me serious about making my own.
Welcome back. I'm Lex, and we're here with Lindsey, and we're talking about the CPRIT program that Lindsey was a part of. Lindsey, you recall 2 years ago, I think you were fascinated a little bit by the different, the dynamic issues that are around disability. Mm-hmm. And among those are the issues of stigma, and that's one that all of us have to live with, and we have to understand if we understand disability. Mm-hmm. So your study to date has focused on cancer survivors. Why did you pick cancer survivors? One reason clearly was because you had to be focused on it to get the CPRIT grant, right? Mm-hmm. But would you have naturally been interested otherwise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think cancer survivorship was something I had learned about through the UT Health program, but actually the topic of cancer survivorship and disability was actually much more closer to me than I had thought, because my grandmother in Thailand actually is a cancer survivor herself, and she has, because of the treatment, has a lot of disabilities. She's unable to swallow, can barely talk, she's lost her hearing. So it hit a lot closer to home than I realized when I first learned about it. It was almost giving her what her experience is with like a new kind of term, cancer survivorship, which I had never learned about until UT Health. So that was something I think that kind of opened my eyes to cancer survivorship, and I think if I would have learned about it, I would have definitely still been super interested in it.
Well, the originally when we were looking at cancer as an issue, we were concerned about the kind of rehabilitation that cancer survivors get. And we discovered in our research before we met you that many young cancer survivors didn't even realize that they were disabled, in effect. And many people who survive cancer, many young people, trying to go back to work, find some issues related to the cancer and the treatment. Some of those issues, Lindsey, you've identified them too as well. What are they generally?
The issues related to after treatment?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of patients will deal with cancer fatigue from the treatment, or especially with breast cancer patients, they'll have lymphedema, so they'll have like physical disabilities, but in general, a lot of patients will feel really tired, but they don't realize that they're actually they're protected under the ADA as a patient undergoing treatment, especially in regards to employment and with work. So I think that just kind of, it's just only a brief kind of encapsulation of what cancer.
What we discovered in our early interviews were that many people tried to go back to work. And after they got on the job, they found that they couldn't work as hard as long as they had before they were treated for cancer. And that was because of the effect of stamina on their person. And many times that was caused by the chemo. Some of them had neuropathy. They had the need to take breaks, and these kind of conditions made it hard for them to retain their jobs when their employer and their supervisor expected them to work as they had before. And they, I think, had not been well counseled on what their rights under the ADA were. Most of them didn't even realize that they were in effect disabled. And then when we took a subset and looked at them who actually talked to their supervisor and explained that they had these issues as a result of their treatment. Many of them were able to stay on the job by getting time off during the day to take a nap, a break, or whatever. And so there's a range of issues there that we discovered, but you drilled down one level below that.
Oh, with my current study? Yeah, so in our current study, I asked the patients or the survivors if they identified with a person with disability, and I think one of the findings we found was that many participants didn't, or they would more disagree. But we saw that in their ADA education score, asking them if their employers are able to do this, that they actually, a lot of them were unsure. They didn't know that their employers couldn't discriminate against them because they had cancer, could ask them about their cancer treatment. And then what we found was that a lot of patients who stated that they would be more likely to identify if they did receive more ADA education, which kind of goes to show that lack of knowledge and kind of that interest to learn more.
Yeah, what we found was that once they finished their cancer treatment, oncologists, the doctors who were treating them, were basically finished with their jobs, and the patients were discharged. And yet they had these limitations. They went back and they dealt with them in the follow-up, but many of them never did get counseling to help them explain how to relate to other folks, and including their employers, after they were treated and after they were, quote, recovered. But recovery is relative, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you mentioned, that after cancer, when the doctors finish with the patient usually goes on their own, but it's up to the patient, I guess, to kind of see what resources they want to reach out to, whether it be joining a support group, but not all patients do that, so you're kind of missing that kind of gap of an opportunity to learn more about what resources are already available for survivors.
You mentioned support groups. Have you located some, been in touch with them?
Yeah, so for my study, a lot of the participants I targeted were patients in support groups. I reached out to a lot of social work counselors. There's some at MD Anderson I've been working with to kind of hear their perspectives, especially since they're working so closely with cancer survivors. It's been really insightful to hear their experiences and kind of what they've been able to see from cancer survivors and how they kind of navigate their new life after going through cancer, but that support groups have been a part of my study, but then also I'd say a lot of the cancer advocacy organizations have been part of my study as well. And
you feel like people who are part of those groups are maybe better socialized or more quickly socialized or better accept their disability status?
I think probably because, or I would say so, because the support groups they have, because I think one of the things that the social work counselors we've talked about back at MD Anderson is that patients feel more comfortable when they can see that there's a sense of community, when they see that other patients are going through kind of similar experiences. So I think kind of having that community provides patients a more outlet of safety, that they can express their kind of vulnerabilities. And if one patient maybe decides to identify as disabled and has a similar experience with another, maybe this other patient will feel more comfortable with accepting this term of being disabled.
Let's talk some more about where to go from here, but first we're going to take a break. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with Focus on Abilities.
The Kennedy Bakery building is said to be one of the oldest haunts in Houston.
Moments shared with loved ones are precious. Joy, enchantment, connection. It's why we travel. At Houston Airports, we know the magic of flight begins the moment you secure your parking spot and embark on your journey. That's why we work so hard to bring you the most convenient parking solutions that are the best fit for your trip. If you're traveling for business or leisure, whether your voyage starts from Bush Intercontinental or William P. Hobby Airport, our parking team at Valet Parking, EcoPark, EcoPark 2, or Terminal Parking is here to give you a first-class experience with a big Texas smile. We're here for you to ensure this moment and every moment in between will be filled with great memories that will last a lifetime. So travel smarter, park smarter, and get more of the moments that matter.
Houston 311, now available as a mobile app. Take a photo, enter your location, report an issue. The quick and easy way to report non-emergency issues or request city service information. Download today on the App Store or Google Play.
Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Metro has been there for you, getting medical center employees and other essential workers to their jobs during lockdown. We're also improving your customer experience, from more frequent cleanings to security monitors on vehicles. We've launched free Wi-Fi and installed over 3,000 new accessible bus stops, all to make your ride better. Visit ridemetro.org to learn how you can drive less and do more.
St. Arnold, Texas's oldest craft brewery, shipped their first keg of beer in 1994.
This is Focus on Abilities. We're here today with Lindsey. We're talking about cancer survivorship, and in particular the issues related to stigma. So Lindsey, many young people, I think, who have been treated for cancer and who are no longer in treatment don't identify as having a disability because they're concerned about stigma. Have you found that's a significant issue?
Yeah, I think in our study, one of the components of my study was asking about participants and cancer survivors' experiences with stigma. And what we found is that a lot of participants are facing stigma from the community just because of their cancer and their treatment symptoms. So what we found is survivors are feeling more left out, people seem more uncomfortable with them, and just in general, they feel that their day-to-day takes a lot more longer, and things in that sort of nature in terms of stigma will be finding for survivors.
So you're a young person, you're not recovered from cancer, but if you were a cancer survivor, would you be personally inclined to reveal that you had a disability, or would you be inclined to not reveal that because there's no obvious evidence of that? Or would it be simply a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, since I've been so integrated with ILRU already and kind of have a lot of experience with the disability community, I think it'd be probably a lot more easier for me to identify as disabled, but I can understand why for other survivors who have, because cancer is a whole another journey, and then it's a whole another life afterwards, and for a lot of survivors already kind of navigating just dealing with cancer, and then I guess labeling, another with disabilities just adds a lot more stigma, and a lot of survivors may be afraid to identify as disabled on top of their already cancer survivor stigma, as there is already a stigma with being a cancer survivor as well. So I can see why a lot of patients or survivors are afraid maybe, or more hesitant to, but I definitely think it could be on a case-by-case basis as well. A lot of the participants on our study mentioned that they felt that their symptoms or post-treatment symptoms weren't as severe as compared to other people who they know in their community. So I guess in that sense, a lot of survivors may also feel that they don't have, necessarily a right to identify because their treatment symptoms aren't as severe.
Well, we can call that survivor guilt. And I don't know, the issue of identification relates to race for some people. It relates to sexual preference and gender. It relates to any number of issues. People who have hidden disabilities are less likely to identify as having a disability because they don't have to. It's not apparent, it's not obvious. If it's obvious, then you identify clearly. But if it's a hidden disability, then the question is, why would I do that? Why would I identify? One of the reasons I think that people miss is that they miss the protection of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what we found early on, before you came, was that many people were losing their jobs because they were not able to perform as they had been before, and they didn't identify as having a disability. They therefore were not under the protection of the ADA, or it wasn't even invoked. They were disabled under the law, even though they didn't identify, but because they didn't make it evident in the process, many of them lost their jobs and so on. accommodations weren't made that needed to be made that would have enabled them to continue to work and perform at a high level. So what we now find is that young people, and I think this is not only cancer survivors, I think may have to do with other conditions like people on the spectrum. We know a lot of young people who are probably diagnosed on the spectrum, even with autism, who don't necessarily identify as having a disability because maybe they don't see it as a benefit, maybe they see it as a negative for other reasons. We don't know that. But your survey is helping us to understand that, at least as far as cancer survivorship is concerned.
And interestingly enough, when you mentioned about hidden disabilities, we asked that question as well in the survey, and a lot of survivors weren't aware that hidden disabilities are actually covered under the ADA.
That's significant. That's worth repeating. So the people who actually were survivors and they had conditions that would enable them to be protected under the law did not realize that they were. That's fascinating. So where do we go from here? Now, you're doing a survey. What will your survey show?
So what we've been able to conclude so far is that there is a lack of disability identity within the cancer survivorship community. And what we hope this shows is that there is a lack of awareness for the ADA and a lack of knowledge of the ADA within the cancer survivorship survivor community. So I guess in terms of next steps, one of the big things that we would hope to focus on is trying to figure out how we can better increase knowledge of the ADA within either support groups or advocacy organizations. And we're also partnering and trying to partner with people at Stanford or researchers at Stanford at their cancer survivorship program to try to see if maybe there's a more substantial program we can implement, maybe some practices we can try to follow and implement nationally for cancer survivors post-treatment.
And we're continuing to work with MD Anderson here in the Houston community. Lindsey, are there groups, if somebody who was a survivor is watching this program or a family member, are there groups that you've run into, had experience with now that you would refer them to?
Yeah, so I think definitely cancer support groups either at their hospital or maybe they can talk to their doctor who they were treated by. Definitely the oncologists and any of the professionals at the hospitals would have contacts and places to refer them to. But then there's also a plethora of cancer advocacy organizations focused on specific cancers, and within those organizations themselves, they have a lot of support groups, a lot of opportunities for patients to share their story. It's just a big community for survivors.
So you can probably Google cancer support groups, and you can find them on social media too.
Yep, social media is a great way for survivors to get involved and kind of learn more about the opportunities they can get involved with national organizations and then also within just social media itself.
Okay. Any closing thoughts?
I guess we're just really excited. I'm really excited to see what we can do with our research and kind of how we can improve support for cancer survivors. I think these past 2 years have been super insightful for me in terms of what gap there is in cancer survivorship, especially since I feel like it's such a smaller field in the research of cancer research. So I'm really excited to see kind of what we can do forward for cancer survivors in terms of support.
Okay. Well, we'll check in with you later. We asked a question at the beginning of the show, how many cancer survivors are there in the United States? And the number is? 18
million. There's about 18 million as of January 2020, but there's probably a lot more now.
Okay. 18 million that we know of.
Cancer survivors within the United States.
Okay. Good researcher, always conditioning your answer. All right, I want to thank all of you for watching Focus on Abilities. Lindsey, I want to thank you for being our guest, and I hope you'll come back to give us an update later on, maybe next year when you're a senior, okay? We had a great program today. We always do. Please watch HTV for Focus on Abilities, and thank you for watching today.
The following program is sponsored by ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.